Well, hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm pleased to introduce you to Moshe MIKANOVSKY. Moshe is a software engineer and product management leader who turns his creativity towards building software products, hosting a podcast, creating visual art, and of course, writing, which is why he's here today. Moshe participates in the National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, if I said that correctly. And in 2013, began writing his first novel, The Resurrector, which can now be purchased wherever books are sold online. In addition to his love for the written word, Moshe loves mentoring and coaching product managers and startup founders, helping them to realize their entrepreneurial dreams. Here today to talk about that and so much more is Moshe MIKANOVSKY. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Moshe.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I'm of course, going to ask you the same question I ask everybody when they're sitting in the seat where you're sitting in, which is, Moshe, where does your story begin?
My story began, I guess, when I was born. So I was born and raised in Israel. Actually, a lot of the things that I put into the Resurrector are coming from my background, from my childhood. Some small anecdotes and stories, or even things that happened to me and stuff like that. But it's not so much the stories themselves, it's more the environment, the city, the place where it is. So I was born in Bnei Brak, which is probably the most religious city, Jewish religious city in Israel. And I was my father was also born over there. His parents came before the Holocaust to Israel separately, and then they got married over there. And then they were one of the founders of the city, and he was born there, and then we lived there, and I was born there. It's a very interesting place because whatever you imagine, as a city is when you go to different cities around the world, so there are some similarities, things that are familiar to you, and there are some, differences. And over there, it's always, to me, whenever I go back, although it's very familiar to me because I was born over there, it still looks very, very different from other cities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly detect a Canadian or French accent in there. So how long were you in Israel for?
Yeah, so it's actually my Israeli accent.
It is.
I don't speak any French, but I do
I don't
live
know.
in.
For some reason, I'm hearing like a Canadian thing happening in my ear.
Yeah, I do live in Toronto. So when I joined the army in Israel, over there it's mandatory, and then in the army I was a software developer. I did 6 years in the army, and I got married to my wife also in Israel in the last year of my service. And then my first job that I found after the army, after about 10 months, they relocated me to North America to work for them over there. So I was in Michigan, in Detroit area for 6 years. And then in 2002, I moved to Canada. So I've been in Canada since then. So it's now 20 years, almost 20 years.
20 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, kind of making that shift, kind of making that move from Israel to North America. What was that like for you? How did that impact your life?
Yeah, it's a very interesting move. I mean, every time that you move countries, even from the US to Canada, as much as Americans think that Canada is exactly the same as the US, it's not. There is that change, and being an immigrant and being new in the environment. Moving from Israel to the US was very exciting for us. It was really the first time I visited America. I never been to the US. I've been to Europe, to some places, but not to the US. So even Detroit was exciting for us. I learned a lot over there. The culture is quite different, with the way people interact with each other. Just as an example, some American people, when we went, on business trips and they came with me to Israel, they thought everyone in Israel shouts at each other, but they don't. They just that's how they talk. They talk with a very high volume sometimes.
Well, that's true in Italian households as well. I can attest to that.
Okay, so there are maybe some more. It's the Mediterranean thing in us, I guess. But that was like small things like that were glorifying the difference between the cultures, the difference between the places. But I also have opportunity to learn a lot, to enhance my career. I did my master's in the US, so also studying in the States was another experience. Made lots of friends. So overall, it was quite good. Two of my daughters were born in the States, and the third one was born in Canada. So we're a multinational family.
Yeah, there you go. Well, tell me, when did you start writing? When did writing come into your life?
Yeah, so it depends what type of writing. So, in high school or school, I did love writing, like, I wrote small fiction stories and stuff like that, but it never went anywhere. And then when I went to become, in the software development, it's a completely different type of writing. But because I was relocated to the States, I was working with the field, with the clients a lot. And in that position, even though I was still developing software, I still had to be a much more verbose with the way I was saying things and talk with the clients and write different things. So a lot of it was writing, technical specifications or writing user guides and stuff like that, which is quite different from writing fiction. Sure. When going back to the book, to the Resurrector, so I was always quite creative in things that I was doing. So in the past, it was more about visual arts, painting and drawing and printing and stained glass. So I always love to do stuff and create things. And especially when I felt that I'm not creative enough at work, I had to find those channels to do that. Eventually, I did try to sell my art, and that was really, really hard. You make a lot of art, and it's quite expensive to do sometimes. And then you try to sell it, and you sell like one painting out of like 50 that you make, and it was very discouraging for me. So it's sometimes so then for some reason I got into writing, and it was like, this is so much cheaper. All you need is like a piece of paper and a pen, or your computer that you already have, and you can do it anywhere you want. You don't have to carry all of your material everywhere and all of that stuff. And you mentioned NaNoWriMo. So in 2013, my daughter, she was at grade 9, and she heard about NaNoWriMo, and she was also very much into writing. She's very creatively talented as well, writing specifically. So she decided to write a story. She wanted to do it. And she got a few of her friends, and all of them decided to do it. And I'm like, yeah, if you guys are doing it, I will do it with you. Why not? So that was really where I started writing. And in those 30 days of November back then in 2013, I wrote the first draft of the Resurrector. And it was quite an amazing experience, because I was able to come up with a story in 30 days and 50,000 words. So it was quite a feat. It was terribly written. And and after that, I was like, there is something there. I need to explore it. I need to see, what can I do with that? Is there a good story there? And if there is, how do I write it in the right way? So that's where it all started.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You kind of you're a software engineer by trade. You mentioned kind of doing that in the Army. Did you ever feel like a fish out of water, kind of embracing that as your career, but having this like super creative side? And that doesn't mean that software engineers aren't creative. They're certainly creative, but in different ways. I'm just curious as if you ever felt like a fish out of water in your career as a software engineer.
Not really. The only thing is that as a child, I always had dreams that I will be an architect, actually, either an architect or interior designer, because I knew that I want to do something creative. And, people told me that if you're an artist, you're going to be starved to death and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, an architect sounds like a good profession. And, but then I kind of got into this program in the Army to be a software developer. And I felt that I'm actually quite creative in that. It's not the same type of creativity because it's not, drawing or stuff like that. But you do, from the language that you write, the software language that you write code, you come up with, an application that someone can use, and you solve problem to users. So that's another thing that I like to do. I like solving problems to people and create value to people, and create, delight people with stuff that I do. So if it is the software that I build, it's always very delightful to me when someone uses it and say, yes, this is solving my problem and I like using it. The same thing when I painted and tried to sell my art, I wanted people to like my art and say, yeah, I love this piece of art and it will hang on my wall. And the same thing, with the book, I want people to enjoy reading it and come out of the experience with some value.
How did you, let's start here in terms of talking about the book. What's the idea behind the book? I mean, obviously you don't want to give away too much of the plot, but broad strokes, I'm curious about what the book is about.
Yeah, so the nugget of the idea that I had back in November 1st, 2013 was, what happens if, it's coming back from my heritage, growing up Jewish and religious, and one of the prayers that we're saying is that God will resurrect the dead in the future. And my thought was, what if the resurrection of the dead is not going to be in the future, but now, and it's not going to be everyone that God's want to resurrect, but just one person. So there is this person that has this power to help a family resurrect a loved one that passed away. So that was the nugget of a what if that I came into the story. And then I started building it up from my experience, back in Israel, etc. So when someone passed away, we, in Jewish tradition, there is the Shiva, the 7 days of mourning, where the close family is sitting, and mourn, and then other people are coming to console them. And that's the setup that I started with. And then a stranger, so there is someone that died, and there is that family, and a stranger comes in, and he gives this power to someone at the family to see again their loved ones. Now, in the beginning, it was more of a parallel world situation where they were able to kind of go into this parallel world and interact with the person that passed away. When I edited it later on, it changed a bit. It morphed into something a bit different, mainly because parallel world has, like in books and fictions, has like rules that you have to build, and how does one get into this? And if he's in the parallel world, where does he, or maybe he's not in the real world. So it becomes more like a dreamscape kind of thing. I also didn't want it to be like a zombie story. It's not that. So it's not like this dead person start, walking around and everyone see them. It's really only between one person in the family. So in the case of the book, in the Resurrector, it's the father. So the son passed away, and then the father is starting seeing visions of his son. And then I put two parallels. So the book has these two parallel things going on. One of them is this dreamscape, what happens with the father and the son when they see him again. And the second one is what happens in the Shiva house in the real world with the remaining of the family, and who is this resurrector? And people are starting coming in and looking for this resurrector. Who is this stranger? And they want to reveal his identity. And which at the end, that's where I will stop. I will not say what's the end is, of course, but there is some conclusion for that, for both of these narratives.
So you don't leave anybody hanging, which is always a good thing.
Yes.
It touches on so many. It's something that is universal to all of us, which is death, right? I mean, we can all. It's one of, obviously something that we can all relate to, which is something that's very powerful.
Yeah.
I'm curious, kind of having started it, written the first draft, the first 50,000 words anyway in 2013. How did the story change over the years, and what was your approach to kind of narrowing it down or editing it? What did you find helpful during that process?
Yeah. So part of it I mentioned already, like, that dreamscape change. But I took a lot of I knew that I don't know how to properly write a story. So I wanted to make sure that I learned how to do it. I love learning, so that was fun for me as well. So I took classes at the University of Toronto in their continuing education for creative writing. And part of those classes, I revisited, some parts of the book and revised them, etc. I also spoke with some other authors and some group of authors to give me feedback, and I engaged with some beta readers. So throughout this process, it was important for me to get feedback and get better in this practice. The things that change in the book, other than what I mentioned before, are related to either exploring more of some of the characters that I put in there. Do they have a space in the book? They don't have a space in the book. Changing some of the order of the book. So, for example, today I have a prologue that describe how the son passed away and how they found him. Where originally in the book it was in the middle of the book somewhere, and I changed it because of some feedback I got, from people about it. I also added like an epilogue because and other things that close the story more tightly, because there were some loose ends. It's very funny because when I read American literature, usually, and I'm a very big fan of Stephen King. Some people don't call it literature. I do. I love it. But in general, in American literature, many times all the open ends are closed at the end, and it's nicely wrapped up. When you read Israeli literature, many times they just drop it in the middle of the sentence, and it's very annoying. It could be very annoying. Maybe not to that extreme, but there is no conclusion at the end to a lot of subplots and stuff like that. So I guess when I wrote the book, I was doing both. I closed some of the stories. I left some of the stories open-ended. So that was also one of the things I got from my beta readers, and I was able to make it much more tightly written.
I mean, just like you have beta users for software and apps, beta readers, can
absolutely
be critically important to the writing process.
Absolutely, and that's a great. To me, it made a lot of sense. I knew there are beta readers out there, but I'm also in the last 10 years a bit more. I'm doing product management, and in product management, you look into the product you try to look into the product in a very objective way, because you're trying to solve a real problem, and you're trying to create value to your users and to the company that built the product. And you cannot fall in love with the solution just because you came up with the solution. And that was one of the things that beta people will tell you, we cannot use this thing, it's useless for us, or whatever it is. And with books or anything creative, in the past, I was always like, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I want to paint, this is how I want to write, take it or leave it. But then I saw that no one took it. I wasn't able to sell much. I didn't want to sell out, with my art. So that was something I put aside. But with the book, I think part of making the process so long, it took me 8 years, and I put it aside for some time. It enabled me also to look at it more recently as a product and get more objective about it, and try to really find, who is the persona of people that are going to enjoy it? How do I get to them? How do they get me feedback about it? And now in the marketing process, when I market it, how do I find these people? Where are they exactly? So it's all of those questions I always ask about the products that I'm developing in my day job. So I do that also with the book.
So when did the book launch? When did it come out?
It came out in January.
Okay, this past January. So,
Yeah.
I mean, almost 10 years. I mean, 9 years, maybe 8 and change, which is a long time to be writing something.
Yes.
Um, did you have the support of your family while you're doing this? Because, writing is such a solitary process and you're investing a lot of time. I mean, you're not just writing, you're going back to school, you're talking to other authors.
Yeah.
This is a lot of time that, I can imagine someone saying, hey, you're spending a lot of time doing this thing. What about us? How would you characterize the support you had from your family during this time?
I had great support from a family. There was never a discouragement or anything like that. My wife, she always knew and she loves the way that I'm applying my creativity. So she always supported me in that, being creative and do the stuff that I love doing. So before, writing and learning how to write, I mentioned the different art forms that I did in the past, and I would always take another course in this, another course in that. So she was always very supportive about that. And with my kids, that was actually one of my goals in getting the book out and publishing it, is to show my kids that it's possible, that even if it takes a long time, if you have something that is worthwhile working on, then it's possible to do. And I always try to find time that will not, interrupt with my family time. So, for example, a lot of the marketing work that I'm doing right now and reach out to people and stuff like that, even some of the editing of the book, I'm just, we're eating dinner as a family together every night. And then, we're talking about stuff and whatever, we're cleaning the kitchen. And then we go and watch TV. And I take the computer and I sit with them in front of the TV and I'm doing my work. And they don't feel that I'm not with them. So it's we work it out. It's actually, I never had any problem with that. I'm blessed.
Oh, that's good to hear. And it is so, having the support of a family and a spouse or partner is so important to the writing process, because you're very vulnerable as you're going through the process. I mean, you are putting, whenever you're making art, you're vulnerable. You're exposing like a piece of your soul.
Absolutely.
So you need a cheerleader. I mean, you need a cheerleader in your corner to help you
Yeah.
kind of push on through, especially because there are times during the writing process where, and I'm sure it happened over the course of 8+ years, you're like, what am I doing? Is this any good? Should I just give up? I mean, those thoughts kind of creep in.
Absolutely.
But to have a cheerleader is so important.
Yeah. The hardest part for my wife was to read the book, because she loves reading in Hebrew. She doesn't like reading in English. So after my daughter read the book and some beta readers read the book, etc., I'm like, you got to read the book. So she put the time, and she also gave me feedback, and that was really, I admire her to do it, even though she doesn't like to reading in English. Then she still did it for me, so that was awesome.
Well, I hope you put her in your acknowledgments.
Of course.
Tell me about the publishing process for it. So kind of going from manuscript to novel,
Yeah.
to getting it out in the world. What was the publishing process like for you?
Yeah, so I tried to reach out to agents, and I wrote, many query letters, and I sent them to agents. Never heard back, so I didn't get that. Kind of discouraged me. And then I found this hybrid publisher, New Degree Press. I found them through LinkedIn from another connection, that she was writing a book with them, and she said they were looking for. They actually have another program, so it's 2 programs running affiliated with Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. One of them is a Creator Institute, and the other one is New Degree Press. And the Creator Institute is where they write a book, and so it's like a 6 months, I think, program, maybe a bit more. And then authors that write the book and they pass through to the next stage, they go and they publish it with New Degree Press. So I already had the manuscript when I contact them. So they asked me to send the manuscript, and very quickly they read it and they greenlit it to continue into the New Degree Press. As a hybrid publisher, it's a bit like I'm like self-publishing. So at the end of the day, I keep all the rights for the book. I put it on the different platforms out there to publish it, but I get the full support from them not just with the support of editors and designers, for the cover, but also weekly workshops on different topics, how to market, how to edit, how to many different things. Even until now that we ended the program already, we still have some workshops that we can come in and join in for different topics. And it really helped me to learn about the publishing process in general. And then in order to do that, it's not just to write a manuscript and have it greenlit, but also we do a pre-sale. So we have to raise funds to almost show that there is interest in the book and we can sell it. So that was a pre-sale that I did last summer. It's a 30 days pre-sale on Indiegogo. That was probably the hardest part for me because I love to create stuff. I don't mind the editing part at all. I actually enjoy editing as well. But to sell, that was like completely different level. And I was able to do that. I was successful in that. And then I had an editor, marketing and revision editor that worked with me for 2 months to revise the book based on the comments from the acquiring editor. And then we also sent it to beta readers that were part of those people that participated in the pre-sale. So part of the pre-sale is to give them this inside look into how I do it and early insights. So I got a lot of great beta readers feedback then as well. And then I went through the cover design process, which we also did with several options, and I put it out to my network to vote for and give me feedback on. So we got improved. And the final design that you see is actually a combination of 2 designs that were created and a lot of feedback that we got. So the product became much better because of that, because we built it with that community. And then I had like copy editors, and I had setting for print editor. So we had all of those steps going on, and then launching. So it was quite, intense 6 months to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. You mentioned the cover. What is the symbolism on the cover?
Yeah, so the fish, you mentioned fish out of water before, and there is a bit of that in the book as well. I think that that's part of it. So the fish is it's a carp specifically. It's mentioned in the book in several places. To me, it's like one of those childhood memories where I would go to my grandma, and she would make gefilte fish. Is that fish from Eastern Europe that they make for the Sabbath, but she will not buy. My mom would buy the fish already dead and cut and just ready to make. She would buy like a live fish, and she would fill her bathtub with water, and it will swim in her bathtub for a few days until she's ready to make it. So it was very, very fresh when she made it. But that was the memory, that I had, and lots of my friends had the same memories from their grandmothers. So that got into the book a bit, and the way that we came up with the I didn't want it to be too dark, but there is some darkness, of course, with the topic and the themes. The Resurrector is really a person, but here this is kind of symbolized like coming from the dead to the living. And then there is this type of a dreamscape in there as well. The water is also the son that died. This is in the prologue, so it's not a big reveal if I talk about it. But he basically drowned in the ocean. So there is also the water as a source of life, and the water is a source of death, and this conflict between the two.
Wow, heavy stuff there.
Yeah.
And I love just kind of hearing that publishing process. It really does mimic the product development process, from for marketing or even product development, because you're trying to identify a need and a niche. You draft a manuscript in a certain genre. Then you do your proof of concept. You get your beta readers, you get your editors there, And then you're taking all that feedback and kind of making it as good as it can be. And I also love what you said. You can't fall in love with the solution just because you created it.
Yes.
That's true as an author. It's true in marketing as well.
Yeah.
Well, I've got some specific questions for you. I call them my hot seat questions. They're not really hot seat questions. They're meant to be fun, but also to get to know you a little bit more.
Sure.
First one, I'm curious, and you're may have a different take on it, since given where you grew up, but what were some of your favorite TV shows when you were a child?
Ooh, depends what age, but I loved, one of them was Wonder Woman, the original one, and
Linda Carter.
Yes, with Linda Carter, and The Men from the Atlantis was another one, with the guy that played in Dallas, Bobby Ewing. What's his name?
Oh, Bobby Ewing. I know Larry Hackman.
Patrick. Yeah. So he was this guy that had these fish hands, like he had, and he was able to swim, and he was able to. It was very cool. Steve Austin. I love that.
Oh, the $6 Million Man.
Exactly. That was one of my favorite shows. Yeah, I guess that type of shows.
Yeah, Wonder Woman came up the other day. Somebody mentioned Wonder Woman. But yeah, that's a great one. I remember she had the little bracelets, and she would deflect bullets.
Yes,
love to see how those would work in the real world.
Yeah.
Probably not so good. Probably be a lot of people missing hands. They tried to do that.
Yeah.
How about this? If we were like looking at your playlists, whether it's Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your music, who are some of your favorite artists that we'd find on those?
Quite a bit of Israeli artists. So I listen to Israeli songs. There is one of them is Dan Reichel. Is is an amazingly talented guy, and he creates this world music. So he always do collaborations with other singers from like all over the world. So you have songs. He sings this with himself as well, but many of the songs are sang by other people. So like many different languages, lots of Hebrew, of course. I also love Italian music. Italy is one of those places that I would love to live one day. So I just put the current pop or current top 40 whatever list on Spotify and just listen to that.
Very cool. Getting into writing, when you're sitting down in front of your computer or with a blank piece of paper, how do you feel when you're looking at that blank piece of paper, blank computer screen, and your goal is to write something creative, some kind of fiction?
Yeah, I try not to start with a blank page. And maybe this is one of those things that also comes from my background in software. Many times in software, you learn, the first thing you learn in every platform is this hello world, how to create an app that will say hello world. And then you have other examples. And many times you just take those examples and you change them a bit to whatever you need. In my case, I'm not taking, other examples and change them. But what I try to do is to have a list of ideas. And then when I have a list of an idea, and the ideas never come when I sit in front of the blank page. So it always come in these odd places or times, in the shower, when I'm in the car, before I fall asleep. So I have a file I have notes on my phone that I always like. If I have an idea for a story or for a nugget of a story or something, I will just put it there. And this way, if I feel like, okay, I want to sit down and write, I'm usually will take an idea from over there and develop that rather than start with an empty page.
Right. Yeah. Some people can get certainly intimidated by that empty page and get anxious about it. But
exactly.
Yeah, I love another parallel there between your professional lives.
It's always good to learn. It's always good to learn, from other things that you do. If you do them well, or if you know how to do them, then why not learn from that on other things?
How about lessons about writing or publishing that you feel like you learned or had to learn the hard way?
I think the selling to people, or especially on the pre-sale. I think that one of the hardest thing, it's not just that it was hard for me to do, but what I've learned is if I look, I'm also, because of my other job, because of my day job, I always look at data and see what does the data tells me and what can I learn from that. And all the people, I got like 150 people that supported me and bought the book, and I would mark exactly in the spreadsheet, where is it that I know them from? So do I know them from a work relationship, or do I know them, are they, friends, are they family? Maybe I don't know them at all. And stuff like that. Or maybe I know them from social media. And then I did an analysis of, how did I get to these people, and how was I able to be successful at the end of the day to do that? So if I do it in the future, or if someone asks me how to do that, what should I tell them? And what I learned over there is that, at least from it's only example of one person. I would love to see it from other people as well, to see if there is a pattern there. I feel there is, but it's only my gut feeling. And that's where, you build an hypothesis and you have to prove it. So I can't prove it by one person, but at least what I feel, and my hypothesis is that it's really about the people that you know, and it's not so much about just outreach to the world that you don't know. And especially in the early stages, when you don't yet have the book out, and you don't have yet reviews of the book, and you don't have yet the book that you can give it to people to read and stuff like that. So more than 60% of the people that bought the book were people I knew from working with them. And luckily for me, I worked like in many places in the last 30 years, and I have a long career. So I knew a lot of people, and I was able to reach out to many of them. But it took a lot of work for me to, find their contact information, because sometimes I lost it or whatever, reach out to them, schmooze with those that wanted to schmooze with, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Probably 95% was people that I knew. So the rest of the, after the work, the people from work were, friends, family, and people that I reached out on LinkedIn or other social media beforehand. And I had like networking with them. So I talked with them at least once before, unrelated to the book. So that was a hard lesson for me on who is really, if you want to really make it out there that way, you really need to create a big network of people that know you. And it's not just people that, you send a message to everyone and you wait to see what will happen. There is much more than that.
Well, this kind of leads into my next question, which is what's some of what's the best piece of advice you could give to an aspiring author? This one actually, I would say more believe in yourself. So I didn't believe in myself for many years, and that's why it took so long. So the 9 years were not just me revising the book on a daily basis. Many times it was just sitting in the virtual drawer of my computer and waiting there, because I didn't believe that I can do it. I didn't believe it's a good story. I believed to people that say that they didn't like this or didn't like that, where all they basically gave me was feedback, and I took it as rejection. So, believing in yourself is probably the most important thing. But of course, you need to also improve yourself all the time, learn new things and improve and improve and improve. So you can believe in yourself, but then if the book that you write is not that good, then, maybe people will not really like it as well. Yeah. Last up is if you could write your younger self some words of advice, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, do it much earlier. Don't wait. That's probably will be it. Just go and do it. It takes me time sometimes to, mature into my ideas and get things out. So now that I saw that I can do that, I'm working on my second book, and I really hope the second book will not, I'm not hoping, I know it's not going to take that long.
Did you start that during November as well, or?
Yeah, I wrote it in the next year in November, NaNoWriMo 2014. But because I was working on that first book on the Resurrector, I never touched that manuscript since then. So You could say it's also like 8 years, but in the making. But I just started revising it recently after I was done with the Resurrector.
All right. Well, the author is Moshe MIKANOVSKY. The book is The Resurrector. It can be purchased wherever books are sold online, and perhaps hopefully soon in some independent bookstores. Moshe, where can people go to learn more about you or follow you on social media?
Yeah, so I have my website, mikanovsky.com. And over there, there is 2 sections. One is for author and one is for product. So if you want to learn about me as a product manager or as an author, you can try each one of them. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So you can search for me and connect with me over there. I will connect with anyone, and I like talking with people. And I'm also on Instagram. It's moshe.mikanovsky.author. So you can search for me over there. And I have in my bio over there my link tree, so different links as well there. And I'm also on Facebook. Just look for my name, Moshe MIKANOVSKY. You should be able to find me there too.
Very good, Moshe. Thanks so much for stopping by to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That was a pleasure, Mike. I really enjoyed that.